Every time you lose money, someone else wins. Not by accident, not by luck. The system is designed this way. Inflation, debt, market crashes, rising prices, they don't hurt everyone equally. While most people struggle to survive, a small group gets richer. So the real question isn't why people lose money, it's who wins when they do. Opening the point where truth starts to hurt. Hello. Today we're going to talk about something, a reality that some people can't even bear to hear and others quietly fear deep inside, wondering, what if it really happens? Economic collapses. Yes, it sounds dark and frightening. Yes, it's a bit depressing. And yes, it definitely makes people uneasy. But let's be honest for a second. If we approach these topics with fear, we learn absolutely nothing. But if we can look at the truth exactly as it is, then we become the real winners. By the end of this video, you won't be covered in fear. Instead, you'll understand much more clearly who actually holds control. Because history gives us a very sharp reminder. Money is trust, and losing that trust can happen in seconds. So tighten your seatbelt. Let's take a trip through the dusty shelves of history together. Chapter 1. The lie that money is always safe. Every empire, every government, every nation starts with the same sentence. Don't worry, your money is always safe. But here's the strange, ironic part. Whenever that sentence is spoken, there's usually a silent panic growing inside the people. When you hear this sentence, the end is usually near. And history shows this hundreds of times. Rome collapsed, France collapsed, Germany experienced hyperinflation, Confederate money became worthless, Argentina reset its currency over and over again, Lebanon's banks shut down overnight, and in all these places, ordinary people woke up one morning and suddenly realized, my money was never really mine. Bank balance, just a number, a dream, an empty promise. Money isn't metal, paper, or ink. Money is trust, and trust is the fastest vanishing capital in human life. Just one spark, one rumor, one headline, and people flood the bank's doors. When the government says no panic, you should know panic already exists. When the government says we are safe, danger is usually right at the door. When the government says don't worry, there's usually a lot to worry about, because history tells us the same harsh truth every time. Trust is always the most fragile economy. Chapter 2. The Solidus of Byzantium. How did 1,000 years of trust collapse? Let's go back 1,000 years. At the time, the world's superpower was the Byzantine Empire, and Byzantium was so wealthy that the gold solidus was the dollar of the Middle Ages. It controlled trade across continents. It was the go-to guarantee for international agreements. Even kings accepted it without question. The solidus was so reliable and so stable that its quality didn't change for 700 straight years. But empires eventually crack under pressure. The treasury ran dry. Wars increased, revenues fell, and one emperor finally said, what if we reduce the gold content just a little? No one will notice. That was the day one of history's classic mistakes was made. At first, nobody noticed. The alloy increased slowly. The purity fell little by little. But trade is an extremely delicate ecosystem. Even the slightest doubt can shake nations. A merchant noticed the reduced purity. Then another. Then European banks noticed. Byzantium's money isn't what it used to be, they said. Trade slowed down. Trust faded. Soon, nobody accepted Byzantine coins without suspicion. The solidus collapsed. Confidence in the empire was shattered. And eventually, the economy fell to its knees. So who won? The merchants who quietly stored real gold on the side, and who lost? The ordinary people who blindly trusted the empire. History screams a brutally clear truth here, as by debasing money, real value always sits where the government can't touch it. Chapter 3. The Black Death. Was it a loss or an opportunity? Think about those terrifying years when half of Europe died. The Black Death, the plague. The epidemic spread so fast that entire villages emptied. Fields were abandoned, homes were left without owners. The workforce collapsed. Yet despite all the destruction, something strange happened. Life suddenly changed for the survivors. Why? Let me explain. Because the population fell, the demand for labor skyrocketed. Wages rose. Owning land became easier. Workers could negotiate with feudal lords for the first time. People who had been stuck in the same place for centuries suddenly gained mobility and opportunity. The crisis hit everyone with its brutal face, but its opportunity side lifted, prepared people from the very bottom straight to the top. And the same thing happened in our time. During COVID, those who held cash and watched for opportunities grew wealthier. Those who weren't prepared fell behind. History keeps hitting us with the same harsh truth. Crises don't destroy wealth, they redistribute it. Chapter 4, Florence's banking disaster. The myth of too big to fail. Do you know what the world's biggest financial center was in the 1300s? Florence. At the time, the Bardi and Peruzzi families were giant bankers. They lent money to struggling European kings and kept entire states alive. But King Edward III of England had one major problem. He had no money. He was at war. The treasury was empty. And one day he told Bardi and Peruzzi the one thing he should never have said: I can't pay back my debt. The result? The banks panicked. Governments were shocked. People rushed to withdraw their money. And then the banks eventually collapsed. Thousands of people lost their savings. Trade came to a halt. Florence plunged into crisis. Back then, nobody even dared to invent the myth that big banks don't fail, because people were forced to face a harsh and terrifying truth. Size does not equal safety. This story feels familiar today, doesn't it? What happened in 2008? Or the regional banking crisis in 2023. Financial institutions that were supposedly too big to fail, collapsing overnight. No bank exists to protect you. They exist to protect themselves. They exist to make money. Chapter 5, the Confederacy's unbelievable inflation. During the American Civil War, the Southern states, the Confederacy, printed money so fast that it became impossible to keep track. A worker who received his salary in the morning couldn't afford bread by the evening. Money printed one day became worthless the next. And when the war ended, Confederate money died completely. But those who had land, those who had gold, those who had food survived. Ultimately, this story brings us back to the same truth. Real assets never fear inflation. Chapter 6, the French Revolution and the collapse of promises. During the Revolution, leaders printed a paper currency called assignat. It was backed by church lands. It sounded like a brilliant idea, and yes, at first it had value. But the state couldn't resist the temptation of printing more. Print, print, print. But how long can that last? Eventually, the assignat collapsed in value. Even farmers rejected the paper money. Bring me silver. If you want goods, give me real value. So what happened in the end? Winners, real assets. Losers, those who believed the system's promises. Chapter 7, the 1997 Asian crisis, trusting someone else's money. Sadly, Thailand's baht collapsed. Argentina suffered a similar fate. Turkey felt the same storm deeply during that period because countries had borrowed in US dollars. When their currencies fell, their debt multiplied. Ordinary people were crushed under the weight of soaring debt. And in the end, large investment funds, they won because they had cash. Chapter 8, Lebanon, a modern nightmare. Between 2019 and 2021, Lebanon shut down all its banks. People couldn't access their money, salaries collapsed, lives changed overnight. People suddenly realized that what they had painfully saved for years was actually the bank's debt. And when the bank refuses to pay its debt, there is unfortunately nothing you can do. History whispers to us again, the money in the bank is not yours. It's the bank's promise to you. Chapter 9. So how did people survive throughout history? All these disasters share one common point. Those who survived always followed the same 3 rules. 1. Real value can never be printed. Gold can't be printed. Land can't be multiplied. Agriculture is real value. Craftsmanship, skill, production, these always stand above any crisis. 2. Those with liquidity seize the opportunities. After a crisis, panic begins. People are forced to sell assets, prices drop. Those with liquid money become the wealthy of the future. Every crisis is a redistribution period. 3. Skills are always more durable than money. People who can bake bread, repair things, produce something, or provide services are valuable in every era. No crisis can ever destroy skill. Chapter 10. Final. History doesn't repeat, but it always rhymes. Economic collapses are not erased stories from the past. They have always existed, they exist now, and they will exist in the future. Because at its core, economics is driven by human psychology, fear, panic, trust, expectations. As long as these emotions don't change, crises won't change either. Now comes the big question. When the next collapse comes, which side will you be on? On one side, people who rely on paper promises. On the other side, those who strengthen real value, liquidity, and skill. The choice is yours. Closing, if this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and join me in the next video as we explore the dark, sometimes frightening, but always educational world of history. Because history never ever hesitates to tell the truth, as long as we learn how to look from the right angle. See you soon.